Okay, so I'm going to attempt the same thing now in Angular. So I'm going to go to the terminal. I'm going to go to my folder, and in my folder I'm going to create a new project. So ng says, would I like Angular routing? Yes. And I want CSS. Okay, so we've created our project Rhymesaurus, and now we just need to open folder, and there is Rhymesaurus, so we'll go to there, select folder. Okay, so here we are then. So we're in our new project, new Angular project, and there's our usual Saurus with its folders, etc. Now, the way you do reading from web services in Angular is to create what is called a service to which you subscribe. Now, this might seem very, very unfamiliar to you, but hopefully this will become a little bit clearer as we go and do it. So if we go again now to the terminal window inside our actual project, and at this point we'll do ng generate, put it here, generate service. I'm just going to check the syntax of this command. So there's, if we go to the Angular kind of documentation here, generate service followed by the name of the service. So I'm going to give the name of the service as data. So I'll call it generate service, and we're going to call the service data. Okay. And if we do that, what you will see in the source or the app folder, you'll now have a TypeScript file called data service. So if we click on that, you'll see you've got this basic root of this thing called injectable. And this comes from the whole software engineering idea of dependency injection, whereby at the time you need some extra functionality in a particular class, you inject it into the class as and when you want it. Well, I won't go into that in detail, but probably people can explain that better, actually. And essentially, this data service is going to be making calls to the TypeScript, to the web service. And the functionality we want is the ability to read web services, and we have within Angular a class called HTTP client. So we can import this into our service. So let's import that. Import squiggly bracket HTTP client, and it's going to be from at Angular /common /HTTP. Okay, so that's the HTTP client. And what we do because you've got this injectable facility, so what we're going to do is now we're going to inject the constructor with precisely this HTTP client. So we're going to say constructor, and inside it we'll say private underscore HTTP. So that'll be the name of our variable. We call a variable called underscore HTTP. This is colon, which is going to be of type HTTP client. Okay, and that means that from this point on, of subsequent functions, we can invoke this this kind of HTTP client object to kind of do stuff. Okay, so let's the do stuff is going to be basically getting kind of like synonyms, isn't it? So let's create a function now called DM, called datamuse API get synonyms, or something like that. So public DM API get synonyms, and we're going to pass into it a query, which is going to be the word that we're going to look for. Okay, now how is that going to work? Well, essentially, we're just going to append this query onto the root of the HTTP URL, which will be getting the synonyms. So let's go back to the Datamuse API. And if you see here then, so essentially it's got https://API datamuse.com /words ?ML, and which I think was something like meaning like. So let's kind of use this as our kind of stem, words question mark ML equals. So let's no, so I'll just copy it bit by bit. So we'll create here a stem in the actual thing. So let's call it DM API thesaurus stem equals, and it's going to be https colon API datamuse.com/. I'll just kind of copy it if I can. So words question ML equals. So go back here. Where is it? Okay, words ML equals. So that's our stem. And this function here will be basically appending a query to that stem. So we could say something like let query string colon string, okay, type is string, equals, let's say DM API get synonyms. This DM API thesaurus stem plus the query, okay, which is the thing we're supplying, and then we're going to return, okay, this, and then dot, and now here I have this underscore HTTP, which is this object that we've injected into this class, which does the reading of HTTP of web services, HTTP dot get, okay, and then we're just going to pass into that our query string. Okay, so that then is our service. And at the moment, all it's doing is going up to the thing and returning the data. But then the question is now, how do we deal with that data? Now, you saw in the previous example in kind of sort of jQuery, it just comes back as an object, and then you just kind of iterate over that object. In Angular, it's a much more formal approach. What you have to do now is define an object, of a class, if you like, a class to which each kind of item of the web service JSON, all of the JSON objects, the sub-objects, will be kind of, if you like, marshaled or put into this class. So we're going to now create a new class. So let's go on to app, and we say new file, and we'll call this something like, because it's a multiple of words, we'll call it something like word chain dot ts. Okay, we'll just call it that, because this be a chain of words. So now this is where we're going to just establish the data structure. If I just show you again that the original data that comes back is in the form, well, let's go to the data muse. We'll see it here. You'll see there, so we've got this data structure. So we've got this array, so multiple examples of things which have words, scores, an array of tags, a string array of tags. So we need to define this, okay, in our Angular. So let's go back to Angular here, the word chain. Okay, so this is going to be quite a very simple class at the moment. We're just going to say something like export class, and we'll call it something like DM word, meaning data muse word. Okay, and as we remember from the example here, each object, it's an array of objects, and each of us got a word, a score, and tags. Okay, so we've got to kind of now put that into an abstract definition here. So we'll say so each DM word has a word which is of type string, it has a score which is of type number, and it has tags which are an array of strings. So string, open square bracket, close square bracket. So there's our word object, okay, which is what we're going to kind of like marshal the results of the web service call into. Okay. So having got that, now we need to deal with how we do that marshalling. So let's now go to the app component TS, because this is, if you remember that the by default in an Angular project, it's app component which gets shown. Okay, might as well delete all of the stuff in app component at the moment. And in the TypeScript file, you have all of the, if you like, the data that should be shown inside the page. And so this really is what we should be doing here is, because all we're ultimately going to show at this stage, we're going to try something very simple at this stage. All we want to show is an array of words, an array of rhymes. Okay, so we should maybe let's create a so we're inside app component. Let's create an array of rhymes. So let's call it something like rhymes to show. Okay, there'll be string open bracket square bracket, and we'll just say equals new array, just to make sure it's kind of initialized as an object and it's not just an empty thing at the start. Okay, so at this point we need to do another piece of what is called dependency injection. So just as in our data service class, we injected a bit of web service reading functionality. So similarly in our, if you like, GUI kind of background class, we need to do a bit of data service. We need to kind of inject our own data service functionality into this. So let's kind of now add the constructor. So constructor, I know it was a private data service colon data service. Okay, and then we'll open screen. That means we can use this data service object later in the class. The problem at the moment is it's complaining, and that's because it hasn't been imported. Okay, so let's kind of import this now. So import data service from, and now here we need to reference our own class. So rather than kind of looking at the .angular, the kind of built-in ones like @Angular, we say // meaning our current directory, and there you see is our data service. Okay, so and now all of the complaining has stopped. Okay, so so in this kind of, you say the background here, what this background is, some function needs to be triggered by a button, which will cause the reading of from the web service. So we're going to do that function right now. So the function is going to, let's say we're going to call it get synonyms, or get DM synonyms, get data mu synonyms. So function get DM synonyms. Okay, and at the moment we're just going to be kind of forcing it to be the word fast. Okay, so so what we want is essentially this rhymes to show to become the result of the web service. So now here we go, it gets hairy. So this time we've got to invoke this data service that we ourselves have created. So we say this dot data service. Okay, now here it is. We're going to use a function. Okay, there it is. DM API get synonyms. Okay, and we're going to pass into it. Well, we just use the word fast because that's the one we're trying so far. Pardon me. Fast. Okay, and now here guys, see, now this is the funny bit. Okay, so we're calling this, and we're going to subscribe our own kind of data sort of objects to it. So we're going to say this subscribe. So when this changes, subscribe open bracket. So this will return something, and we're going to say it's going to return an array of DM words. Okay, so subscribe. Okay, and we're going to put now inside a bracket here data colon DM word square bracket. Okay, and now this is kind of very kind of going to be unusual if you haven't seen this before. Although I must at this point, before we go on, you'll notice it doesn't like DM word because it can't find it, and that's because it's in our word chain kind of a model class. So let's do that. So import open squiggly bracket DM word. Okay, from, and it gets the same principle. get something in the current directory and its word chain. So that's where we define that class. So if we do that now, okay, so here it is, fast subscribe. Oh, sorry, we've got the extra bracket here at the end, I don't know what. And then we do the equals arrow, which essentially is a sort of functional programming concept, which means run the function with this as a parameter. Okay, so so I'm going to put a squiggly bracket here. Okay, and we're going to say essentially we're now going to try to take from data, all we want is the words. Now, we could do a loop of through all the items in data and then just get the words and put that into an array. But another piece of recent JavaScript uses the map function, whereby you can iterate over a whole sequence of objects and just take one thing out of that object and put them into a new array. So we could say something like this, this dot rhymes to show equals data.map, and now then send for each object, let's say which will give us a thing, the word y, just to indicate our object, equals arrow, meaning just give us back the y dot word. Okay, so essentially we're converting this array of things which kind of tells you the score and the various tags and all this sort of thing. It just gives you that. And just for now, just to see if it does indeed work, we're going to do something like console log, and we'll just do this dot rhymes to show. Okay, semicolon. Okay, so now at this point, we're now just going to put in a button which will cause this function to trigger. So let's go to our HTML page here. We won't do anything more complex than just creating a button. And on click equals oh god, I can't remember the function. Hang on a minute. Click equals dm get synonyms. Okay. Click equals quote dm get synonyms. Okay, and button get synonyms. Okay, and I'm going to save that. Save all, just to be certain. Usually when you first do one of these things, you always get some errors. So anyway, let's see what happens. ng serve. And yes, there is an error. I've missed out you see the wait a minute. So that's the end of the loop of there. But this will need to, because there's this extra bracket there, so there'll need to be a bracket here and a semicolon. Okay, and let's just see now if I save that, will that work? It says compiled successfully, so let's have a look. And it hasn't worked because you'll notice here static injector app model. So it's essentially something. The HTTP client is not actually been included in the project. I think it's in the module app module.ts. So let's go back to that. And we see here in app module, as we can see, we've forgotten to include the HTTP client, but also the data service. Okay, so these are these things that are getting injected into various different classes. So let's after app routing module and app component, we're going to import the HTTP client module. Okay. From, and this time it's at Angular drat. A minute, from Angular common HTTP, and we also want the service module. Actually, thinking about it, we can just copy this. So let's go to app component.ts. Okay, and I'm going to import data service from data service. So let's go back now to the app module. Okay, and this here we have to add into imports. We need the HTTP client module. And under providers, we need the data service. Okay, there's only one provider at the moment to the data service, so there we've got that. We've got the dot there before the Angular thing there. So if I'll save that now, and now let's see if that is any better. Let's kind of so now we seem to have something working. We've got get synonyms. And let's press get synonyms, and as you see, it has worked. So in the console, we've got all of the synonyms of the word fast. So the next stage is to actually now make it possible for the user to put in different words.